Right, so hopefully you all can hear me. Good afternoon and welcome to our another live session. All right, so I hope all is well. I know we are coming very close to the end of our classes. We have a couple things to finish. We have reproduction to finish, excretion, and genetics. Now I'm going to go through excretion today. I'm going to correct the diseases multiple choice, and we are going to finish, and as a matter of fact we will also be going through the latest past papers, which I would like to do with you all in an actual session. So that will be the January 2024 paper. If you don't have it, you will get access to it, as well as the May-June 2023. So those two recent papers are very important to cover because the most recent, you get to see the style of the questions. And if you notice the older past papers that we have been doing throughout the entire academic year, you will notice they tend to be a little more challenging. But the newer ones are very much straightforward. However, they are the types of questions that CXE can sneak in, and you need to kind of apply all that you have learned. All right. Now, Genesis and Keenan, since you all have to do a paper 3, I sent a video that I would like both of you to sit in your spare time. If you have, I believe the video is like about 20 minutes long. That is just to familiarize yourself with the paper 3s. I will also give you all some practice in this class. For you all are going to work on it for like 2 weeks, and I will have like a breakout room session where I can talk to both of you individually so that you all are clear on what you're going to do for the paper 3. Of course, the others, you all don't have a paper 3. You all would have been doing your SBA labs starting from Form 4 into Form 5, and hopefully you all are finished with your SBA labs. Shivan, your mom told me you had some labs to do. Try to meet the deadlines, try to do all of the requirements so that you could get at least, if you're going in with 7 out of 10, 7 to 10 out of 10 in your labs is a good place to be. All right. Below 7, you're kind of putting yourself at a bad place because everyone wants to get the full 20% that they are going in to the exam with. All right. And remember, SBAs is the student lab reports as well as how they perform some of the labs, and you want to really put your A game in your reports. All right, and it also helps you with your paper 2 because one of the questions basically is going to be sort of a lab where you have to either answer some questions related to a lab report. You may have to plot a graph, you may have to draw a diagram. Likewise for Genesis and Keenan, who has to do a paper 3, you would see similar lab related questions. All right, so let's get today's session started. Let's go through what we have in store. Right, so the first thing I'm going to start off will be the correction of the disease multiple choice, as well as we'll take a short break, and then I'm going to actually go through the excretion topic. I've also posted some past papers here, paper 2s. This is the 2005 to 2016. All you have to do is when you open a PDF file, you could select a year. I recommend doing from 2016, go back, right? Because it's good to get your recent ones covered. Try to get at least 10 years of past papers covered before your actual exam, and that will give you a well-rounded foundation in terms of coverage of topics, seeing the style of the questions, and being prepared for your exam. All right, now I will also share some solutions with you, but it's very important you do the questions first, and then you could correct yourself using the solutions and putting in the points that you may have missed. All right, I also uploaded the excretion notes, so feel free to read in your own time. All right, so let's start with the disease multiple choice. All right, so let's go. Right, get your answers out. You should have your answers ready, waiting to correct. I'm going to correct. Right, there was 2 handouts. Which should I correct first? I'll correct this one first, and then I'll move across to this one. All right, let's see if anyone else is present. All right, attendance is low, but we are continuing. They will have to catch up with the recorded class. Okay, match each item below with one of the options above. Each option may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Caused by the malfunctioning of a body organ. So anything to do with the body is not performing as it should, organs are not working as it should, or there's some part that is not doing its particular role, like let's say diabetes, the pancreas is not producing insulin. That has to do with physiological diseases. All right, so that would have been D. Results from a shortage or lack of a particular nutrient. When you're lacking something or you're short of a nutrient, that has to do with deficiency. Deficient means you are lacking something. All right, so that would have been A. Number 3. Which of the following statements is incorrect? Sickle cell anemia is caused by an abnormal gene passed on from one generation to the next. Now, we will talk about sickle cell when we actually cover genetics, all right? So it's a genetic disease or hereditary disease. So as you can see, reading this statement, this is actually true. Hypertension is a physiological disease, right? It has to do with the malfunctioning of the circulatory system or the blood vessels. It's either the plaque has built up on the walls have hardened, or it could simply be the passage of the blood is very high, all right, due to diet, due to stress, due to lack of physical activities, lack of exercise. So far this is true. Scurvy is caused by a deficiency of calcium in the diet. So scurvy is actually linked with vitamin C. Yes, it's a deficiency disease, but it's not because of calcium, lacking calcium in the diet. If you are lacking calcium, then the person is going to suffer from either osteoporosis, all right, which is soft or brittle bones, or even rickets, which is a type of condition where a person may have bowed legs, right? If their bones bend easily. So right off the bat, we can see C is incorrect. Moving on, number 4. A new disease spread quickly through the population of a certain country. This disease was most likely to have been. So now I have noticed during that whole COVID pandemic period in 2021, 2020, around there, a lot of the questions CXC was bringing was actually based on disease. All right, I guess they saw it fit because, you know, the whole virus, COVID virus, was infecting a lot of people. So they brought that topic Now, anything to do with something that is spreading quickly through a population has to either be a virus or it could be a bacteria too. But the main thing is pathogens can spread easily if you don't sanitize properly, if there's overcrowding, if there's a buildup of garbage, and that anytime you have those pathogens and it transmits from one person to the next, it can wipe out a population or spread very easily. So this one is caused by a pathogen. Number 5. A vector is a disease. Sorry, a vector of a disease is best described as, so it's a vector is an animal that is carrying a disease causing agent. They are not spreading the disease themselves, but they are carrying another organism that is causing the disease. So I'm reading part C, an organism that transmits pathogens from one person to another without itself being harmed. So rats, bats, ticks, their bodies are unaffected by the pathogen. But if they were to come into contact with your food, or let's say they urinated and you were subjected to their waste, you can basically get the pathogen from their body parts or their remains, and then you are unfortunately affected or infected by the pathogen. All right, but the rats and bats, they can withstand that pathogen living in them. Number 6. Which of the following lists consists only of diseases spread by mosquitoes? So mosquitoes, there are different kinds, but you have the Aedes aegypti, which is going to spread yellow fever, dengue. Malaria is actually spread by Anopheles mosquito. Right, I'm seeing HIV or AIDS, so we know this is not true. We're seeing malaria, dengue, chikungunya, which was something very common in the Caribbean a few years ago. Chickenpox is not one by mosquitoes, neither is influenza. So that leaves us with B. Right, match each, I know this is a bit faint, but match each item below with one of the options above. Which stage would not be found in water? Obviously, it's going to be A, the adults. They fly, they have wings, so they are not going to be in the water. But the rest of the stages are in water. During which stage does the most rapid growth occur? All right, so we have the eggs, C, then it changes into larva, and then pupa. Now, I don't think, or perhaps if you view the recorded disease class, I would have went through the life cycle of a mosquito, right, which is something very standard. However, you ought to know like how long each open image, right? How long each stage will last for. So the eggs, within a few days to months, right? Eggs are hatched, right? When it turns into the larva live in water. They develop into pupa in as few as 5 days. Then we have the pupa, which is going to live, and in 2 to 3 days it turns into adult. So the one that is quickly changing is basically eggs can hatch within a few days to months. Well, that's long. Pupa in as few as 5 days, but pupa does take 2 to 3 days to turn into an adult. So that's a very quick transition. Right, so let's go back to the options. During which stage does the most rapid growth occur? So as we can see, the pupa takes 2 to 3 days. So it grows very, very rapidly to the adult mosquito. That's D. Alright, hope you all are okay so far. Going to number 8. During which stage does, number 9. Which of the following would be least effective in controlling mosquitoes? Alright, now these questions, they tend to have answers that are correct, but you have to choose something that is least effective. So there may be more than one effective method, but ranking the effectiveness from low to high, you have to choose the one that is the least or lowest one that is effective in controlling mosquitoes. So we have adding insecticides to areas of standing water. Normally I don't use insecticides in water because it can pollute the water, right? You don't put insecticide in water. Introduce a predator of mosquitoes to breeding areas, right? This is what you call a biological control. So no, people won't do this, but naturally, if you have the presence of frogs and toads, they can actually get rid of mosquitoes very easily because they feed on it. Eliminating areas of standing water, which is the most effective one, because if there's no breeding ground, then they cannot lay their eggs. Spraying areas where adult mosquitoes are found with insecticide. Right, so normally you use insecticide with the adults because they are the ones that are flying. So insecticides tend to be sprays, aerosols, which you spray onto the air, right? Not in water. So this is, so I will rank this as like very effective. Then I will rank the last one as second place, then third, and this will be the least effective one. 10. When a diabetic injects insulin into her thigh, the insulin, now insulin is a hormone. Somebody who have diabetes, either they have type 1 where their pancreas are not producing insulin, alright, or they could be type 2 where their pancreas do produce insulin, but the insulin is not working. Why is insulin so important? Is because it lowers your blood sugar. So after you have a meal, insulin has to basically take all of the, well, most of the glucose that is released into your blood and carry it to the liver to be stored. Alright, so let's see. We have speeds up removal of blood glucose by kidney, not the kidney's role. Stimulates cells of the pancreas to produce more insulin. Stimulate body cells to absorb glucose for respiration. This will be the only one, 3. Alright, if you put insulin into your body, it's not going to cause your pancreas to produce insulin. The reason why you're taking insulin is because your pancreas is not producing it. But injected insulin not going to cause your pancreas to make any. Alright, so I hope that makes sense. Alright, 11. What hormone produced by the pancreas has the opposite effect to insulin? So after you have a meal, insulin is produced. If you are fasting, alright, like Ramadan is coming up, people tend to fast during Lenten season, but the opposite of insulin is basically glucagon. Glucagon is the hormone that when you are fasting, you still have energy to perform your daily functions. So how are you getting the energy to do that if you're not eating? Glucagon is basically going to your liver, where all of your glycogen storage is found, and it's going to convert glycogen into glucose so that your body can get energy. So this is the role of glucagon. Number 12. Which of the following would be least effective in controlling diabetes? You see this least effective one? You always have to weigh out your options and rank them. All right, so least effective in controlling diabetes and hypertension. Eating a balanced diet containing lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, that's very effective. They always say 90% of who you are is what you eat. And the 30% is your physical activities, your exercise routine. All right, exercising moderately and regularly, I would rank this as 2. Practicing good hygiene, not that is not linked with these diseases. Attending regular checkups with a doctor, this is number 3 for me. So this will be the least effective. Hygiene has to do with what am I doing here? Hygiene has to do with pathogenic diseases or infectious disease. So getting rid of pathogen will save you. Practicing a good personal hygiene, bathing, brushing your teeth, washing your hair, all of those things will prevent pathogens from growing and living in your body, which will prevent you from suffering from a infectious or pathogenic type of disease, not diabetes nor hypertension. 13. Which of the following would be the most effective in controlling the spread of a viral disease? Right, so we have quarantine persons with a disease. Well, we see how that went. Treat infected individuals with antibiotics. Right, this virus, antibiotics do not kill viruses. Practice good sanitation, prepare food with using good food handling. All right, so off the bat, it's C. 14. The outbreak of a certain disease within a human population is unlikely to result in unlikely. Yeah? Look at the words. So you have to read it again. The outbreak of a certain disease within a human population is unlikely. So something that's not supposed to happen. Loss of productivity, that does happen when there's a disease. Right? People can't work, they can't function. Increased earnings. Increased demands on health service, that is true. Loss of human resource. So off the bat, how are you going to have more money, earn more, if you can't even work or businesses are closed when there is a disease? Right? So that is unlikely to occur. So there you have it. 14 multiple choice. Make sure and tally your marks, of course. Right, so now we have our second handout. Let's see who has joined us. Right, so Yusuf, do you have your disease multiple choice answers with you? Right, so we are going to the second handout. Human health and disease now. Right, so which of the following organism causes acquired immune deficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS? All right, so what we have noticed, AIDS is due to a virus known as human immunodeficiency virus, which is HIV. Right, so it says it all, virus. That's C. Number 2, an organism which transmits disease-causing parasites from one host to another is called an, right, so we learned vectors like rats, bats, mosquitoes. They carry something that is causing the disease, but they themselves are not affected by the parasite or the pathogen. Number 3, how is a dengue fever parasite transferred to a new host? Right, the host is the person or organism that the pathogen invading and they causing the disease onto them. So how is it transferred? So dengue, right? Remember, dengue is spread by a mosquito. If you look at a mosquito, which let's get a picture of them, right? So you will notice they have that long needle-like mouth. They will pierce into your skin, draw blood up into that needle-like mouth. However, before they draw the blood up, they actually secrete saliva, right? So let's get that mosquito mouth part so you can see it. Right, we don't have to know the structure of it, obviously. Right, a bit fuzzy. Let's see. Okay, this one looks clearer. Right, so this long projection here is basically going to produce chemicals, right? They also release saliva and whatnot. And in so doing, the pathogen or the virus is going to be transferred into your bloodstream. And once it invades your blood, right, let's put a right, the Aedes aegypti in particular, you have to be very, very cautious. They tend to live in very humid environment, all right, in tropical countries. They tend to have that kind of white stripe, white, yeah, there's a white coloring in their body parts. All right, so once they pierce into your skin and they release saliva, they are releasing the disease-causing agent into your blood. All right, so it's due to a mosquito bite. Which of the following groups of organisms are vectors of disease as well as agents of pollination? So, agents of pollination, which is something we will cover the second week, right? Well, next week we can do that, is basically how pollen reaches a stigma of a flower. And insects are able to transmit pollen because their legs pick up the pollen. If you look at honeybees, they will have little pollen attached to either their legs. It's very hairy. The hummingbird as well, they tend to pick it up through their needle-like mouth. And butterflies, when they land onto the flower, it releases the pollen into the stigma of the flower. So yes, they can be vectors of a disease. Not the butterfly really, but insects as a whole. There are a range of insects and they are said to carry a lot of disease-causing agents. I'll tell you one, like for instance, ticks. ticks can spread something called Lyme disease, which is very, very dangerous to your immune system. And they themselves are also agents of pollination, because some of them are found in plants, and that is how they get transferred to dogs. If dogs are walking through a lot of bushy areas, they tend to have ticks that basically hook into their fur, and then they crawl and hide under their hair. Alright, so that's number 4. Number 5. A disease can be cured by antibiotics. So antibiotics is a type of drug or medication you take if only you are suffering from a disease caused by a bacteria. Now I'm seeing influenza, which is caused by a virus, so that is out. They have TB, which stands for tuberculosis. They have AIDS, which is actually caused by HIV, so that is out. Anemia, which they didn't specify, there's sickle cell anemia, that's a genetic disease, and then there's iron deficiency anemia, where you are lacking iron in your diet. So if you did not know what TB is and you look at the other options, you can clearly see it is not caused by a bacteria. So that leaves us with B. Which of the following components of tobacco smoke affects blood pressure? That would definitely be nicotine, which is the drug or the stimulant. Alright, it increases your heart rate, your blood pressure. Number 7, which of the following stages of the life cycle of the mosquito may become infected with dengue fever parasites from a human host? Right, so if it is the human has the parasite and the mosquito were to inject their needle-like mouth, the parasite can be transferred to the mosquito. So that will definitely be adult. So it can work both ways. On number 8, which of the following elements, if deficient in a plant, will make it not able to produce chlorophyll? So chlorophyll, which is the green pigment in the leaves, if you are lacking, now this one is very tricky, right? It's not calcium, right? Calcium is not required by plants. Manganese is required. Iron is not required by plants, but these two are very important. However, to make chlorophyll, nitrogen plays a very important role, right? And it's very important to know your plant deficiency all right, so these are this is a really good guide into understanding the color of the leaves and what mineral they are lacking, right? I don't know why this can't move. Close you off. Right, so okay, so we see nitrogen tend to be a kind of pale green, right? Not a very rich green. So a lack of nitrogen means the plant doesn't produce enough chlorophyll, right? Now iron, so here we see that iron is important in plants. It tends to turn yellow, right, or brown. All right, so lack of iron causes fading leaf colors. Potassium, on the other hand, you tend to have yellow spots, brown spots. All right. Yellowing leaves are also a first sign of a potassium deficiency. However, the difference here is that new growth is affected as well as the mature leaves. There will also be small brown spots around the leaf edge, particularly on the younger leaves. Phosphorus, you tend to have the yellow circles, brown circles. Magnesium it looks very similar to lack of iron with pale leaves instead of vibrant green. However, with a magnesium deficiency, the veins inside the leaves will stay shade or too darker and greener than the rest. So the veins is darker, the leaf blade itself turns paler. Alright, so it's important to kind of go through these. You know, it tends to creep up in your multiple choice. Alright, this is another good one. We have phosphate, leaves are darker than normal, loss of leaves. So all of them are very important in the chlorophyll, but nitrogen in particular is the main role is to produce the green pigment. Alright, some of them, which when you go through, you will notice some of them are important for the roots. Alright, so take your time and go through those. Rickets is caused by a deficiency in vitamin. Alright, so A is the eyes, B will be for the bones, C is the immune system, prevents scurvy, vitamin D has to do with your skin. Alright, so let's see what else. Number 10. Which of the following is not a pathogen or disease-causing organism? We have bacteria, mosquito, virus. Nematode is actually nematodes. Alright, let's revisit what is this. Nematode okay, so it looks like a kind of worm. Yes, it's a type of worm. Alright, also known as roundworm. Nematodes are very small, slender worms. They say that many are parasitic. So once they are parasitic, they can spread disease. And we have so we have learned that it's spreading a disease. Which of the following is not a pathogen or disease? It's spreading a disease. Oh, well, definitely mosquito. Mosquito is not a pathogen, it's a vector. Right, so I got caught very easily there. Right, so nematode can spread disease, viruses can spread, bacteria can spread disease. Alright, welcome Keenan. Hope you're catching up and you're settling and you had some water to drink. You didn't just rush to log in. Alright, so let's continue.
Good afternoon, Miss.
Good afternoon. Alright. Alright, number 11. In which of the following types of immunity do antibodies cross the placenta? We will come across the word placenta very soon when we start reproduction. That's something I need to cover with you. Right, so, but we can still narrow our options and figure it out. Alright, now antibodies are basically chemicals that are produced by your lymphocytes. Alright, so anything to do with something that is naturally made, right? There's different types of immunity. So if you have antibodies that is going to cross the placenta, it means that it is coming from your mother. So even before you were born, you would have received antibodies from your mom. All right, so that's a natural process, naturally made, and it's not your body that is making it, but it is your mother who is producing the antibodies, and it is passing across the placenta to her unborn baby or her fetus. So therefore this will fall under natural passive. We would have covered this in circulatory system, right? We have natural active, that has to do with your body producing antibodies, so you actually getting sick. Artificial active is basically artificial, meaning something that you purchase, something that is man-made, made in a lab. So artificial active has to do with vaccines in particular. You inject yourself with the, let's say, the influenza shot, all right, and you are introducing a dead form or weakened form of the pathogen. So your body tries to get rid of it, and in so doing, creates a memory cell so that in the future, if you contract that same type of pathogen, your body will fight it off faster than if it was the first time you're getting that pathogen into your body. Then we have artificial passive. Now, cancer patients in particular, they need to purchase white blood cells because when they are undergoing their chemotherapy, radiotherapy, the treatment of cancer, to treat the disease, their bodies are going to basically lose white blood cells. So it is very important for them to take artificially made white blood cells to boost back the body after undergoing the therapy. All right, now you and I, we can't go into a drugstore and purchase that. This is something that is very, very costly. Has to be able to has to be compatible with your blood type. But there's a lot of discrepancies in terms of purchasing white blood cells, right? Because if everyone was able to do so, then we wouldn't ever get sick, all right, if you think of it in that aspect. All right, number 12. Which of the following types of immunity uses a vaccine for ready-made antibodies? All right, so vaccine of ready-made. So it's not a vaccine that contains a pathogen, which is what all of us would have taken if you all got the vaccine for COVID or influenza. Those are not antibodies. Those are pathogens that they inject into you, right? So when they say vaccine of ready-made antibodies, they are talking about artificial passive, where you're actually getting white blood cells from another source. All right. 13. A human baby is immune to most of the diseases for a short period of time after birth to which its mother is immune. All right, this type of immunity. So yes, the baby is born with some level of immunity, although they say, yeah, you mustn't let people come next to your child and don't let them hold a baby and these things. But they have some level of white blood cells, and that is due to natural passive, right? Now, breast milk also is rich in antibodies, and during the whole pregnancy period, when the baby was growing, it would have gotten antibodies through the placenta. Brittle bone in humans is caused by deficiency in the diet of the minerals, right? So when you hear bone, you automatically think of calcium and phosphorus. Which of the following disease is caused by a deficiency of iodine in the diet? So anytime you think of iodine, now when you go to the grocery, you would see there's something called iodized salt, right? It's a different type of salt. You have the regular sea salt, you have iodized salt. So people who lack that particular mineral, they can get it in the grocery. And if you tend to have swelling in your neck, that is a sign of a disease which they call goiter. Infectious diseases cannot be transmitted by, we have droplet infection. Well, droplet has to do like when somebody sneezes, you have those little liquid droplets that is dispersed into the air and it lands onto you. You have animal vectors. Well, we have mosquitoes, bats, rats. They are basically carrying a virus or a bacteria in their bodies. We have mutant alleles. Well, that has nothing to do with infectious disease. If you have a mutant allele, which is your genes in your body has randomly changed, all right, you cannot spread it to someone. That is you. That is your body. The gene has been damaged, so you cannot carry it you cannot pass it on to someone else. So therefore, C is the answer. We have sexual intercourse, which is why we have a whole branch of disease known as sexually transmitted diseases, STDs, which are examples of infectious diseases. Which of the following terms best describes the way of life of most pathogens? So pathogens are, well, we know it to be bad, they are harmful. Saprophyte is a name given to organisms that feed on decomposing matter. So that would be decomposers are bacteria, fungi. Parasite is something that lives on you or in you and they spread a disease. All right, so not all saprophytes may be a disease causing organism. Some of them are actually good because they recycle minerals in the environment, they break down organic matter so that it can be used in the soil. Plants can get the minerals from it. So not all are bad, right? Some are very beneficial for the environment, but most pathogens tend to actually cause diseases. And the ones that cause diseases, we tend to refer to them as they're parasite, they're parasitic, they are bad. All right, so we will refer to the pathogens most as like a parasite. All right, but saprophytes, we don't use them in a negative way. We tend to say saprophytes as a form of nutrition when you are covering autotrophic, heterotrophic. Saprotrophic is another type. It's just the decomposers. All right, so we'll go with B here. This is a tricky one. 18. Which of the following diseases can be controlled by appropriate diet and exercise? So your lifestyle has a huge part to play in how your body functions. And anytime your body is functioning incorrectly, it malfunctioning, that has to do with physiological diseases. All right, so what kind of disease can be controlled by diet and exercise? Definitely hypertension and definitely diabetes. Hypertension is looking at your salt intake, right? Those who like to eat ramen, right? Ramen is loaded with salt. All of those snacks like cheesies, potato chips, they are filled with salt. And when you talk about diabetes, you have to look at how much sugar you are taking. So juices have a lot of sugar, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. Now that's just juice, but think of like sweets that you're taking or fruits tend to have a lot of sugars as well. So you need to look at portion size, portion control, sugar intake. All right, so if you let's say you use 2 spoons of sugar in your cup of tea, then that should be your cutoff day. You shouldn't consume anything else with sugar, so you should stay away from carbohydrates. They break down into sugar. A person may become immune to a bacterial disease by, we have taken antibiotics, avoiding contact with an infected person, being infected with the bacteria, avoiding sexual contact. So if you are infected with a bacteria, you can develop white blood cells to get rid of it, but I wouldn't say, you see the word immune, because sometimes you do get infected, but you're not going to be overly sick as you will be when you got infected the first time, right? If that makes any sense. So actually, you take antibiotics only when you get sick. You don't ever take antibiotics to prevent getting sick. It don't work that way. So therefore, C will be the answer. All right, so you're developing an immunity when you are infected because your body is going to create memory cells. 20. Which of the following types of diseases is sickle cell anemia? So once they say sickle cell, we call it hereditary. If they say iron deficiency anemia, we will call it deficiency. Which of the following treatment is not a way of providing immunity to a disease? Inoculation with an inactivated pathogen, vaccines with ready-made antibodies, isolation of the infected person, breastfeeding an infant. So isolation of the infected person is not a way of providing immunity. Alright, you're just preventing spread of the disease, not the immune part of preventing the person from getting sick altogether. 22. A disease is caused by a deficiency of protein is, right, if you are lacking protein, which is a very important nutrient, you can suffer from something known as kwashiorkor. And kwashiorkor is mostly seen in poorer countries where there is no food, no access to resources whatsoever. 23. Which of the following diseases is caused by the inability of the islet of Langerhans to produce insulin? So anything to do with insulin, you automatically think of diabetes, and that is right. The islet of Langerhans is basically it's a cell found in the pancreas which is responsible for creating the hormone called insulin. So if you don't have that insulin, you are going to be suffering from diabetes. So in other words, your pancreas is not working properly. So that is why it is called a physiological disease. In which type of immunity are vaccines that contain weakened pathogens used? So weakened pathogens, that is a man-made product, and it is an active form because once your body gets the weakened pathogen, your body actively is going to make white blood cells to get rid of it. Last one, which of the following drugs causes loss of muscular coordination and damages the liver? So we have alcohol, all right, which we covered in the nervous system. So there you have it. All of these is a very all-rounded review of the disease section. Right, disease is very easy to score marks if it comes in your paper too. in your paper one, of course, look out for multiple choice questions similar to these. Or I would say easier than these. These are actually more challenging than CXC's multiple choice. Right, so what we will do, we are pausing for a break. All right, and then we are going on to the excretion topic, something that, is a very complex system, like excretory system. So you want to have your devoted attention for that segment. So what time it is? We have, now it's 5:30. We can resume at 5:45, right? Let's take a good break away from the screen, and we will continue. Alright, so getting ready to resume. In the meantime, you can send a message, raise your hand, give a thumbs up so I know that you are back and you're hearing. Alright, so we are starting off with excretion. Yes, I'm seeing the thumbs up. Genesis, I did not see your thumbs up. Right, so just a reminder for the private candidates, Keenan and Genesis, I sent you all a video on paper 3 guidelines. However, view that video before next week, because next week I want to put you all into a breakout room to do a paper 3 as practice. Alright, and in that time I will go through it with you all so that you can get some insight into how to go about the paper. Alright, so it's not going to be foreign to you on the day of your exam. Alright. Right, so excretion or the excretory system, these are the requirements in your syllabus. First, what is excretion? So excretion has to do with the removal of metabolic or what we refer to as nitrogenous waste. So anything that contains nitrogen would be things like urea, ammonia, uric acid. Those are what you call nitrogenous waste. Metabolic waste is basically waste that is produced or created in the body from chemical reactions. So it could be something like a gas, like carbon dioxide. It could simply be something that is in high concentration, such as salt, or it could simply be water. Anything that has an excess amount in the body and it is created from a chemical reaction, it has to be removed. Alright, and if you don't remove it, it can actually cause other reactions to stop working. It can change the pH of the body. It can basically create toxic waste which can damage cells. Alright, and therefore the body will not be well performing or a good environment to keep functioning. So eventually it can lead to death. Alright, so metabolic wastes are formed from chemical reactions that take place within body cells. This table is just showing you the different metabolic processes, the type of waste being produced, where it is being produced, and where it is being excreted. So we have carbon dioxide. This is produced from respiration. All of your cells produce carbon dioxide. Plants tend to get rid of it through their stomata in the leaves. Humans tend to get rid of it through their lungs, so they will basically exhale and causing the carbon dioxide to leave the body. Water is another one in respiration, same thing. However, water can be lost in urine and feces in mammals. Alright, in plants, it can leave the stomata in the form of water vapor. Right, so not only humans or animals get rid of waste, plants as well has to get rid of waste. Alright, oxygen is one. They will get rid of it through the stomata. And how is oxygen produced? Is through the photosynthesis reaction. Urea, which is our main focus, urea contains nitrogen, and it is basically produced from amino acids. When you have a lot of amino acids, the liver has to deaminate, right? So that's where you're seeing in the liver, and then eventually your kidneys will help get rid or excrete urea through the form of urine. Bile pigments is something you tend to hear in digestive system. The liver produces bile, bile emulsify fats. Alright, so bile pigments are produced by breakdown of hemoglobin in mammals. So it actually comes from the red pigment in your blood. Alright, but it's a broken down form. The liver will basically get rid of it. The liver is where it is produced, sorry. And eventually, now they use the word excreted here for feces, but technically this is incorrect because soon you would notice egestion, which is a waste, another term which you would learn. Egestion has to do with removal of feces. Alright, so we don't really use bile pigments for excretion, we use it for egestion. Alright, so let's take note of that. And this is a table you can fill out from the one above. And let's start off with excretion in plants. This picture is just showing you the different outlets or the sites where waste can be exited from a plant. So sometimes when you look at trees along the bark, you see little scarring, but that is actual holes or pores where gases can leave, right? That's similar to what you call the stomata, except the stomata, the pores found on the leaves. Lenticels are found along the um, bark of the tree. All right. So now these are the different types of waste. So you have gaseous waste, which is the oxygen, as well as carbon dioxide, depending on what reaction. All right. Then we have water vapor that is evaporated through the leaves. You tend to see little liquid droplets on the surfaces. Solid waste as well can be excreted, right? But it tends to be little crystalline structures like salts, all right? And when they actually accumulate on the leaf will eventually drop, right? So that is how it is removed from the plant entirely, right? Through the shedding of leaves, peeling of the bark, falling of fruits. Gums and raisins. Sometimes, if you go hiking and stuff, you tend to see a kind of thick, waxy consistency leaking from branches. These are what you call gums, and they contain a lot of waste. So when you see that it is just being expelled from the barks, that is the natural way in which a tree is getting rid of it. Alright, I can also leave the lenticels. Where do urea come from? So urea is produced in humans. Urea comes from excess amino acids. Amino acids is a building block of proteins. So sometimes in your meal, they always telling you to eat protein, yeah, but you're going to have a surplus amount or extra amount that the body can facilitate, right? So yes, you absorb the amino acids during absorption, but there's always a lot, and your body cannot process it, so it has to be carried to the liver, where it is converted to a less toxic form, which is urea. All right, and that whole process is called deamination. Right, so now we have the structure of the urinary system. All right, urinary has to do with the formation of urine. So that is why we have the kidneys, because they filter in the blood. Then we have our tubes that carry the urine to the bladder. All right, pay attention to your blood vessels. We have vein, renal, vein and arteries. The one that is bringing in the blood is called the renal artery, carries blood from the aorta to the kidney. The one that is leaving the kidney is what you call the renal vein. So it is actually eventually going to pump the blood back to the heart, right? The right side of the heart or through the vena cava. right? So we have to know your tubes. Leaving the kidney, you have ureter, you have the bladder, right? It's like a little pouch, stores the urine. You have muscles right beneath it, which controls the flow of the urine. When it is contracted, it keeps the urine in the bladder. When the muscles relax, it expels the urine through the urethra so it can be removed from the body. Now, if we were to zoom into a kidney, right, this is the external view. If we were to dissect it longitudinally, we are going to see little pockets. And in these pockets, you have tiny, tiny tubes. All right, so let's go through the structure. Now, the outer coat is called the cortex. This is where small molecules are filtered from the blood and where most are returned to the blood before it leaves the kidney. So you have some filtration taking place. The medulla is these little channels which helps in control of water content of blood. Alright, and you'll see later on the various tubes that are involved in that process. You have the pyramid structure, part of the medulla in which urine drains into the pelvis. So once the blood has been filtered, you have your waste that is collected in the tubes. You have the amount of water that is being either absorbed or lost. It will eventually drain into the pyramid, which is this kind of collection unit here, which flows. So if you notice, all of these connections have a main channel where it's collecting at the pelvis. Then it flows into what you call the ureter, right? And then from the ureter, we can clearly see it is a long passage till it reaches the bladder and then out through the urethra. Right, so let's pay attention to the arteries and the veins. Right, so remember in your exam, it's not going to be color coded. You're not going to tell what is artery from the color. You have to pay attention to the arrow. Alright, so we have arrow coming in, renal artery. Arrow leaving, renal vein. Right, so let's continue with the functions of the kidney. Kidney is responsible for excretion, osmoregulation, controls the pH of blood. It's also what you call an endocrine organ, right? So it releases a hormone. But what we are paying close attention to is these two, right? Starting with excretion. So inside of your medulla of the kidney, in these little pockets, is where you're going to find millions of this structure, which you call the nephron. We sometimes refer to it as a seminiferous tubule or the mammalian tubule. Part of it, which is the Bowman's capsule, is actually found in the cortex region. Right, so you have your part of the nephron here and the other part in the medulla. So let's go through the various processes and the functions of each part. So I have two diagrams to help you. This one is actually showing you the different parts very clearly. So you're always starting off with the arrow that is going towards the nephron. Right, so we're starting from the what you call the renal artery, which is connected to an arteriole, which is like a sub branch from the artery. So you have artery and then you have arteriole, and then you have the glomerulus, which is the knot of capillaries. Alright, and then you have this little cup shape, which we call a Bowman's capsule. Alright, and then you lead into this tube, which we call the first convoluted tubule or what you also refer to as the proximal. Proximal means first. Eventually it flows down this loop of Henle. You notice it's a long loop. Alright, you have the descending limb, the ascending limb, and then it flows into the second convoluted tubule, or your distal convoluted tubule. So this one far away from the first. And then it eventually flows into this drainage system, which we call the collecting duct. Alright, so we're seeing this line going across, which is showing you this is where the cortex, this segment of the nephron is in the cortex region. This bottom segment is found in the medulla region. So the nephron itself is like spread across from the cortex to the medulla of the kidney. Right, so we're traveling down the renal artery. We have dirty blood coming. Dirty blood contains waste such as urea. Alright, so it flows. Now you're going to have a lot of things in the blood, right? So for instance, you're going to notice it's going to contain, so from renal artery you're going to have water, salt, urea, glucose, amino acids. They are all traveling in the renal artery. When it comes across the glomerulus here, ultrafiltration takes place. So you're going to have these molecules are going to be filtered out of the blood, and it's going to reach the Bowman's capsule. What is going to filter? We have water, salt, urea, glucose, amino acid. Blood is not to be filtered. Blood will remain in the glomerulus. Alright, so once we have our small molecules filtered, we call it ultrafiltration. Pressure filtration is another name. So these molecules are going to basically diffuse. Some of it is going to pass through like water by osmosis, and it is eventually going to reach the proximal, or the first convoluted tubule. You're noticing a lot of arrows leaving the tubule and going back into this vein, right? This is what you call a vein now. So you have renal artery, glomerulus, then we have the vein. So we have all of the things that has to go back would be glucose, amino acids, some salt, some water will be heading back into the blood. You don't want to get rid of all of these things. Not all of them are bad. Alright, so this is what you call selective reabsorption. 70% of water, all of the glucose, some salt, some amino acids are reabsorbed. Going down the loop of Henle, you're going to also have water being reabsorbed, as well as the distal convoluted tubule. And then eventually the remnants that flows into this channel, or the collecting duct, is what you call urine. Alright, so urine is what contains urea, water, and salt, which moves down the pelvis, then down the ureter to the bladder, and then exits the body through the urethra. Now, some water that is reabsorbed may be under the control of ADH. So, depending on how much water you have in your body, the brain has to detect and tell the kidneys how much water to either get rid of, how much water to keep back or conserve, instead of getting rid of it in urine. Alright, so this is what you call the formation of urine. You have ultrafiltration, or what you call pressure filtration. You have selective reabsorption, You have reabsorption that takes place depending on the amount of water in the body. All right. And then eventually, what flows into the collecting duct is what you call urine. And urine contains excess water, excess salts, and urea. All right, so I hope that is clear. You have 4 questions, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's get 4 volunteers. All right, if you can feel free to go through the slides. It has been posted. Let's get 3 volunteers. Choose a question, read it out, and give your answer. The rest of you should do it in your brain in the meantime. Quiet so far. Who wants to do the first one? Right, you could go ahead and raise your hand. Keenan, right, the first question, go ahead and read it.
Which of the following sets of constituents is found in the urine of a healthy person? I pick C, urea, salt, and water.
Very good. So if you look at the last slide, last one that we looked at, it was big and bold in red. Right, excess water, excess salt, urea. Sometimes they put the word excess, sometimes they don't. But it's fine. It's the same components. Right, let's get a second volunteer. Second question.
Which pair of substances is most needed for the metabolic process of the human body? AMS,
Yes, so you need glucose. Glucose is what gives us energy. And we need oxygen because how would our cells be able to respire? So you need those, right? When I say most needed, you're keeping that in your body. It is not waste. What is waste would be like carbon dioxide, right? We don't want to say water is entirely waste. You need water too. But to a certain extent, you can't have too much water in the body. All right, if you over drinking water, you notice you're frequently going to the toilet. So it means the body is trying to get rid of the excess amounts of water. Urea is a waste, carbon dioxide is waste. All right, let's get someone for the label. Genesis, would you like to do one of these? Haven't heard you. Right, which labeled part collects filtrate from the glomerulus? So if we are seeing the diagram clearly, we are
Could
seeing
I answer, miss?
Yeah, go ahead.
C, miss.
Okay, let's go through together. So I'm glad that they say C, right? Because what you have to know is your parts of your nephron. and it will require you to draw the structure. Draw, label. Label it as you see. Now, you notice I have A, B, C. A, B, C has to go with these processes. So A would be like number 1. I should have put the letters here. Right? B would have been number 2. Right? Number 3 would have been some of the B's like down here. And then number 4 would have been C. So if you cannot look at it, this is number 1. This will be number 2, these two. Well, this one here, this will be 3, and this will be 4. Right? I want you all to pay close attention to these structures and what is taking place. So when they say the word filtrate, it is what is being filtered. So filtrate would be these things here. Water, salt, urea, glucose, amino acids are filtered. They are what you call the filtrate. They're passing through the little pores of the glomerulus, and it is going in the direction as the arrow pointing here, which is B. Alright, so B collects the filtrate from the glomerulus, and B is what you call the Bowman's capsule. So it collects, it basically capsulates the glomerulus, as you can see here. Right, so I know it's a fresh topic, so which label part brings blood to the glomerulus? So look at it. This is the glomerulus. Which vessel is bringing blood to this area here? Let's get someone who is quiet. Yusuf is quiet. Right, let's give Yusuf a chance to answer there.
Yeah, I think it's Amos.
A is correct. So A is what you call the renal artery. So notice there's no arrows, but they're always putting the renal artery over in this side. So blood flowing in a particular order. So it moves from renal artery to the glomerulus, and then it leaves through the renal vein, which is D. Right, so that is a little practice. Last but not least, we have to know what is renal failure. So renal failure is also known as kidney failure. Right, anything to do with renal is kidney. So how can the kidney fail is either you may have some sort of STD, you may have kidney stones, you may suffer from hypertension, or diabetes can also have an effect on the kidneys in the long run. All right, so if the kidney fail, both kidneys that is, toxins build up in the blood. People have to visit the hospital to have their blood filtered through a machine. Right, so they have to, since their kidneys are no longer filtering blood, they have to depend on a machine. So we call the process dialysis. Right, and some hospitals have machines, with very sad, there's only like 3 machines per hospital. People have to make appointments. There's a backlog of individuals who need to go. So it's a very sad state, the whole treatment in hospitals, if you have to depend on it. But there are places that do offer the system privately. It may be costly, and I'm not sure of the fees, but these individuals who are seeking dialysis has to maintain a very clean diet. And if they do so, they won't have to cleanse their blood as frequent as if they are having a lot of salt in their meal, um, or too much protein, that is. Then they will have to definitely depend on the machine more frequently throughout the week. And at the recommended amount of time you have to undergo this treatment is 3 times per week. And each treatment takes around 2 to 3 hours. Alright, so let's go through the machine. Now you need to have a tube that is going to carry blood out of the body, but not all at once. You can't drain out all of the blood in your body, you will die. So it's slowly pumping small amounts through a blood vessel in the arm. We see an arrow that is leaving. So there's a little pump that is causing the pressure to increase, and then it leads into the machine. Inside of the machine you have fluid. So you have the tube and you have a surrounding fluid. This tube has pores or little sieves, tiny porous holes like this figure here. And the fluid, which is what you call dialysis fluid, is going to be like an artificial blood, but the artificial blood is not going to have any waste. Alright, the artificial blood in this case is going to be very clean, contains all of the components of regular blood. But then you have your dirty blood coming in here. So anytime your blood is going to interact with the clean blood, it creates what you call a concentration gradient from dirty to clean. So it's going to pick up all of the dirty, all of the urea, all of the excess salts, all of the excess water, and is going to pass through the little pores and enter the dialysis fluid. And that process will move from a high area of concentration to a low area of concentration is what we call diffusion, as well as osmosis when it comes to the water. All right, and when it enters the fluid, the dialysis fluid, it is then collected. So you have used dialysis fluid and you have fresh dialysis fluid being pumped. Anytime the used fluid is pumping out, fresh dialysis fluid is coming in, always maintaining a concentration gradient of clean blood, so that your dirty blood that is coming into the tube, the waste that is in high concentration, will move to the low concentration. That is how the system works. Alright, so this is just an enlarged view of the mechanism inside of the machine. So again, you have your patient blood, right? So patient blood, then you have the dialysis fluid here, right? And then all of the waste material passes through the little pores into the fluid. Clean blood returns to the patient. Dialysis fluid flows out to be replenished by fresh fluid. Alright, so hopefully that made some sense. Right, so what I will do, I'll show you a short video on this dialysis treatment. So let's look at that. Right, and then there's just a few more slides and we are finished with excretion. Anyone has any questions so far? Right, so let's look at the treatment. You may want to turn down the volume or raise it.
Your doctor may recommend dialysis, a procedure that removes waste products from your blood if your kidneys are not functioning properly. Healthy kidneys filter out waste, excess fluid, and electrolytes like potassium and sodium from the blood. These waste products exit the body through the urethra in the form of urine. If you have kidney disease, your kidneys gradually lose function, leading to an accumulation of harmful wastes and excess fluid in your body, increased blood pressure, and bone or blood problems. Dialysis can also be done to treat acute kidney failure, which occurs when your kidneys stop working suddenly, or to remove drugs or poisons from your body. In one type of dialysis, called hemodialysis, your doctor will use a machine called a dialyzer to clean your blood outside your body. Some weeks or months before you begin hemodialysis, your doctor will prepare a vascular access site on your body. Your doctor will create either an arteriovenous graft or an arteriovenous fistula to access your bloodstream. To begin, he or she will numb the area with local anesthesia. To construct an arteriovenous graft, your surgeon will make a small incision in your forearm and insert a soft plastic tube called a graft to connect an artery to a vein. To create an arteriovenous fistula, your surgeon will make a small incision in your skin and connect an artery with a vein to make a larger vessel called a fistula. Once your vascular access site has healed, your doctor can start hemodialysis. To begin, your dialysis nurse will insert 2 needles into your AV fistula or graft. Once the circuit is set up, your blood will flow slowly out of your body and through the dialyzer. Inside the dialyzer, your blood will encounter filtering fibers and an absorbent cleaning solution called dialysate. The fibers will remove waste and excess fluids and electrolytes from your blood. Your cleaned blood will emerge from the dialyzer and continue through the tubing back into your body through the second needle at your access site. When your hemodialysis session is complete, the needles and tubing are removed, and you can go home.
Alright, so that's basically how this system works. Alright, so just like, let's see, 4 more slides, right? And then we are completed with this topic. Right, so normally they tend to bring in homeostasis with excretion, because homeostasis has to do with maintaining a balanced environment. All right, so the internal environment in your body, once it is regulated and maintained, we call that whole process homeostasis. Now there are various changes that can occur in your body, such as the amount of carbon dioxide in your blood can either increase, your temperature can increase, your blood sugar levels can change, the amount of water in your body could also change. However, your body has an optimum requirement or a particular amount that it should be regulated at. Alright, so in order to regulate it, the body has to first detect if it's either too high or if something is too low, right? So normally the brain is in charge of that. Once it's either too high or too low, it has to be corrected, which is what you call a negative feedback mechanism. And once it is returned to its balanced state, the body is now in a constant environment, which it should be at most times. Now, first, what is a feedback mechanism? Feedback mechanism is basically the corrective step-by-step change that will take place in your body to bring back the particular hormone or solution or chemical to its correct amount. So in some cases, like, okay, let's just look at this for a second. Most mechanisms for homeostasis involve negative feedback mechanisms. A detected change causes the body to bring it back to normal. Positive feedback mechanisms are less common. Positive feedback has to do with when the body is just functioning properly. So it's just continuing, it's just sending its positive feedback and carrying out that chemical processes. But if it is off balance, then you have a negative feedback mechanism. And most times we tend to have a lot of these negative feedback mechanisms taking place because the body is subjected to so many changes, whether it be diet, whether it be environmental, and then the body tries to correct itself. All right, so let's go through the corrective mechanisms such as osmoregulation, which is a type of homeostasis process. Osmoregulation has to do with the regulation of water and salt in the body. So yes, you could drink a lot of water, and which is good, but too much is bad. But the body will then try to get rid of the excess amount. So how does it do so? Is by a negative feedback mechanism. So first, we have, okay, so say this is the water content of blood. This is normal. This is where it should be. But let's say you drink too much water, right? Too much water drunk. Then water content of the blood is high. You have receptors in the brain, which is what you call the hypothalamus, is going to detect that, okay, there's too much water. So the brain is going to send a message to the pituitary gland, right, which is, you all know the pituitary gland. It's going to basically produce less ADH. Less ADH or less antidiuretic hormone is going to lessen the volume of water reabsorbed by the kidney. Alright, so if you have less ADH, less water is being reabsorbed. So that means you have more water being released in the urine. So urine output is high, large volume of dilute urine is produced, and as a result, your body water content will return to normal. Right, so that's one angle to look at it, and then there's another angle. Let's say you had a little bit of water. So maybe you may be sweating, right? Or you've consumed a lot of salt. These are reasons, or these are ways in which you have less water in your body. So again, the brain will detect, tell the pituitary gland to produce more ADH. ADH will target the kidney, causing more water to be reabsorbed. So more water being reabsorbed means less urine, less water in the urine. So you have a small volume of concentrated urine. Therefore, the water content of the blood returns to normal. Right, so these are what you call negative feedback mechanisms. Right, so these are two others, but I will save it. Don't want to give you all too much. These are other negative feedback mechanisms that I want you all to read through. This is to do with the regulation of blood sugar, and this has to do with the regulation of temperature. But we did this already in skin, so we don't have to go through this again. All right, so what I would leave you all to do, since we've completed excretion, is to practice. We have to practice some excretion questions. So I'm going to post it. I would like you to read through your notes, of course. Right, so excretion in humans. Right, let's see which ones I'm going to let you do. You're going to do number 1. I'm going to post this document. I know you have a lot going on. You're going to do all of number 1. And we can actually do number 2 as well. Right, because I like how they bring in the dialysis fluid there. So just number 1 and 2 of this handout. And that should be fine. Right, number 1 and 2. I'm going to post it for you now. Right, so that's it for today's session. Right, I do hope that you're trying your best to keep up studying in the night, taking your breaks in between, finalizing whatever labs you may have, SBAs. And now is the time to really assimilate all of your notes and do all of your past papers in preparation for your exams that is coming up very, very soon. Right, so the countdown is very near. So have a good night, everyone. See you all next week.